working on the hot frog today. Thanks everybody. Good help. Hey friends, it's a beautiful day out today and we are going to use this opportunity while the sun is shining to start our hot frog, get it ready for the worms that are on their way out to us. For those of you who aren't familiar, this is a hot frog tower. It normally only has 2 tiers, but years ago when I was running this more regularly, I had purchased an expansion, so that's why we have 4 tiers. Don't worry though, we have labeled them in the past, we numbered them, so that way we could keep track with what was fed. But the gist of the towers are, you're supposed to start in one, let's say you start up here, and then once those are done, you shift the levels around, and in theory, the worms will go travel to the next tier to find food. Hopefully that's the case. However, this bottom area has always been an interesting conundrum for me. So this is the bottom of the hot frog. There's a little drain, which make sure you close it. But it seems like no matter what happens, we always end up with worms down here, for better for worse. They get in here, they get in the spigot. So before we even start the other tiers, we're gonna prep this area. Now I know that we are putting coconut coir, which is still pretty wet, as well as compost in here. So I am just gonna put some shredded paper in, hopefully. Oh, well, are you gonna check for me? And hopefully, if nothing else, this will double as bedding for them and maybe a food source, but we'll check it periodically. So tier 4 is gonna be our bottom tier. We're really not going to be getting anything going in tiers 3 and 4. Those are just going to be our bottom overflow area. But what we are going to do is make sure they are ready for hopefully future, transitions, I guess. And Hot Frog, when I started originally, had said you should put 1 sheet of paper or something here just to keep everything in. It'll break down over time. So that's what we're going to do. Sorry, I forgot to give you guys an update. Here's Wally. He'll be supervising us today as we're setting up tier 4. He loves sitting in the sun, sunbathing. And I don't know if you can tell, but Moose is over here in the shade, munching on sticks. So in theory, this will be the most bottom layer. It will have the least activity for the foreseeable future. I have 2 of these squashes that have literally been sitting on our counter since the fall. And I kept meaning to put in our urban worm bag, and I forgot. So I thought, what a nice test to be putting them in here and seeing if worms find them, if worms break them down. I do have a larger one that is, or I guess this one's the smaller one, but it is softer. We'll put it on tier 3. For now, let's add some just basic coconut coir. And as we're adding this, I just want to point out to you guys that I used hose water outside. You could use, your tap water. You could use whatever filter water you want. But I have, over the years, come to the conclusion that I think it's better if we just put the water into the coconut coir, regardless of your water source, and let it evaporate a little bit over time. Because honestly, even the most purified stuff seems to have chemicals in it. And so I tried to let this sit out for about a day or 2 and just open air. So hopefully things like the chlorine and stuff will evaporate off. I don't know if there's a way we can test it, but we're just going to get this loosely started. So if worms happen to find their way down, they're ready. Now we'll do the same for tier 3. I'm not going to go out of my way to sanitize these because we want the biome from last time that was in here. And I could bring some, compost and stuff from our urban worm bag downstairs, but I know not everybody has that. So if you were starting new, yours would probably be clean. Don't worry if it's not perfect. It's literally going to have worm poop in it. So if you were starting more, without doing all the things that I'm doing, these would get filled a lot more. We're just preemptively putting stuff in here as a contingency. But now we'll get on to tier 2 here and we'll get it started proper. So we want these tiers to keep, hopefully, the worms in as much as possible. Now, if you were starting new and let's say you were doing the toilet paper roll method for feeding, where you were just feeding one, toilet paper roll per feeding until it was gone, you would plan to do that. You would still put paper in, you would probably still have coconut coir or some sort of bedding and shredded paper or something like that. We are going to take this one step. Over time, coconut coir will break down. It's kind of a double use thing here. It's part bedding, part food source. It's obviously not their preferred food source, but it does the job. In the future, you probably wouldn't want it to be this wet. If you squeeze the coconut coir and water comes out, it's probably too wet. But we have this container here, and this is from our tumbler, so it's kind of pre-composted compost to a certain extent, and it is very, very dry because it was outside in Colorado and things are dry here. So the coconut coir is going to help rehydrate, and the food or the compost here, because it's partially broken down already, is going to be, hopefully, we're going to find out, a good test for our worms. Now I do have a little bit of shredded paper from packing paper I just got recently. I just literally shredded it right before we started recording. That's going to help add some bulk, and before the wind kicks in, we're going to add some more coconut coir on top. You can probably tell there's a lot of liquid in here. And again, because we know that this is literally going to drip down, it's going to rehydrate everything, I am not worried about it at all. And this is just one brick that we spread out between these layers. We can hydrate another one, no problem, later if we need to. But I think for now, this is going to be good to get tier 2 started. We're going to go ahead and do the same for tier 1. Now here's the thing. They say you should have castings in here when you get them started, but if you're new to worm composting, vermicomposting, you're not going to have any. Don't worry, it's not a critical thing. We just want the worms to have a great space for the biome to develop, which is why we're getting this started now. It's going to have a little bit of time to sit and percolate before the worms get delivered, and that way by the time they get here, life will be here. There will be life in the bin. Worry, it doesn't have to be exact. I'm actually going to do something different on this tier. We're going to take the compost, put that down first. And this is the compost that we had in the tumblers that was probably the most broken down. So I'm optimistic that they are going to burn through this fast, and we can just keep adding other compost that we're going to be taking out of our tumblers in here and hopefully emptying those out. Well, hi Moose, you going to come check? Thanks, buddy. Yeah, he knows where there's food. And just to help add some buffer, we'll put our shredded paper, packing paper, whatever. And then before it blows away, we will just dump this in. And the reason I'm doing the coconut coir on top is because this is the absolute most top portion of the entire Hot Frog. So even if there is extra moisture, you know what? It's gonna be pulled down by gravity, and it'll distribute throughout, and ultimately pull up in that bottom section where we added the shredded paper to begin with. So I'll get this all in here, and then we'll get the Hot Frog moved inside where it's going to live. Don't worry, this isn't going to stay outside, just the messy part. One of the great things about the towers are you can literally just pick them up and move them wherever you need to. So this is kind of going to be a temporary area for us. We've got some oyster shell flour, another brick available if we need it. We can put the container that we harvested the compost from in the bottom as an overflow drip with the rest of the gardening stuff. Spoiler alert, we got some new earth boxes going in, and we will be doing some winter sowing here soon. But we're gonna just let this sit. That's all you gotta do. Let it sit for a couple days, a week, whatever you can before your worms come, if possible. But listen, if you can't do this, and let's say you order the Hot Frog and your worms and coconut coir all at once, don't worry about it. If it all comes together, it all comes together. You put it up right away. The worms are more resilient than you think. So now we just wait for the worms.